Yo, what's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Riddles Around the World. We have a interesting topic today, and the man of God himself has returned again. Back to back episodes. Welcome.
Thanks.
So, today we are going to be talking about aliens. So, this should be a fun one because we've been talking previously to recording. We are having different ideas on this, so this should be pretty interesting and fun. So, what is your take on aliens? Or would you like to start with a definition?
Yeah, we can start by clarifying some stuff real quick. Which
Go, go, go.
first thing I guess we should say is we're going to talk about a lot of stuff related to aliens. Of course, UFOs are a big one in there, and
Mm-hmm.
so if I mention UFOs, that is not the same thing as talking about aliens, right? If a UFO is just an unidentified flying object, proof of UFOs is not the same thing as actual objective proof of aliens. So I just want to clarify that. I also want to say that when we refer to aliens and whether or not they exist, what we're asking is not just is there any kind of life out there, is there intelligent life out there? Is there life out there that's capable of being able to think and reason and have technology and use advanced tools, that kind of thing? Not just is there a bacteria out there somewhere, but real intelligent life is what we're arguing. And if there is there any way to prove it based off of any evidence that we have now? That's the topic we have today.
Of course they're real. They have UFOs. You didn't know?
Oh, this could be good.
Who's flying those unidentified objects? Wasn't me.
Oh, it's Elvis. You didn't know?
Hey,
Anyways,
the Men in Black told me that is true. It's real.
right? Yeah. Because he's from Mars, right?
Something like that. Uh, See, I'm the opposite. Like we've discussed before. I think they're real. It's mainly due to numbers. It's a numbers game when you think about it because we've talked about in previous episodes universal stuff, how many galaxies and potential other universes there are. There's no way we are the only ones out there with some type of intelligence. It's not possible. There's that number game is going to catch up to you way too quick if you do the numbers. How many galaxies and how many universes and how many I want to say universes. How many solar systems are out there and we the only ones? Come on now.
So here's the problem when you play the numbers game, right?
Mhm.
Is when somebody's saying numbers, they want to use the vastness of space and the number of galaxies, the number of planets, number of stars, all that. And they
Like I
say that
did.
means, and that, yeah, well, like you did. So when they do that, and they say that means there must be life out there,
Has to be.
there's two problems with that. The first one is, again, are you referring to any form of life or are you referring to intelligent life? And the second thing is, it's a false absolute, right? It's a logical fallacy to say that because of one thing, something else must be true. You're saying they either do exist or they don't. There's nothing in between. And just the number of galaxies out there means that they must be true. But that's not an actual evidence that they exist. So the actual correct statement would just be it's incredibly unlikely that they don't exist. It's incredibly likely that they do exist just because of the number of planets, galaxies, etc. Now that's an argument that's not just statistically likely, but understandable, and we can run with that. Although I will admit, I still don't believe in them. I don't believe in intelligent life. Let me put it that way. I don't believe in
Well,
intelligent life.
another thing about that is there are other habitable planets. You remember in the media speculated about it. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, maybe less, maybe more. The super Earth that they were talking about. You remember talking about that?
No, I don't remember that.
It
Let's
was
see.
it was basically, if I remember correctly, I could be remembering false information. It was basically another Earth-like planet, but like double the size. If I remember correctly, I'm probably wrong on how I'm
I
explaining that,
I
but
am looking at some super Earths, but super Earths, as far as I can tell, it's just the comparison to size.
oh, well,
Um,
it was
there might be
also
some. I'm trying to see
like
if there's any that were considered habitable.
I'm pretty sure it
Um,
was also like a couple light years away. So I mean, it would take a long time to get there. But
yeah, so
but the
let's let
fact
them
is
know.
that they found something. similar. So I mean, that's another factor you can throw that in there with the numbers game, in my opinion, is there are other habitable planets. Are are you going to say that the chances are extremely unlikely that something is there?
Here's what I'm going to say.
Okay,
We can't base the possibility of life on other planets as a possibility on whether or not they're habitable for us, right?
in general
So,
is what I
so
mean.
right. What I'm saying is so we're carbon-based life forms that need oxygen to survive. Our atmosphere is a high amount of nitrogen, right? So, so we're saying that this planet's habitable because it meets those conditions. That doesn't necessarily mean that it would support life of another kind. Just because all of the life here on Earth needs certain conditions to live doesn't mean there's not a form out there that would. So I'm not saying they can't exist, but I am saying that we can't use the evidence of other planets that would support our life as evidence of other life.
Are you trying to use a Mars Attacks reference right there? You know, they came down here, if they ain't got the little dome over their face, they explode.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't think of that one, but that's a good example. Yes, okay, right. Like because if we were going to say there's life out there, they may be perfectly fine in an atmosphere that's 99% carbon monoxide, which is poisonous to us.
hmm
So whether or not it's habitable for us is not an argument for their existence, is what I'm saying.
I feel like you're kind of counteracting your own argument there,
No, no, no.
because
Again, I'm not saying they can't exist. I'm saying I'm not going to leave it till I see evidence. But I do think that's a poor argument for why they might, is what I'm saying.
so you gonna need a little green man to show up on your door to make you believe. Come on,
Hey, pretty much, yeah. All right, like I would, like until he abducts me, I don't believe it. Okay,
if you get abducted, ain't nobody believing
I know.
you.
They'd be like, you deserve it. Shut up.
Let's see. I'm sorry,
The
I
other thing,
lost
of
my.
course, if we're talking about if they're very likely out there, that I will agree to. It's so unlikely, it's almost impossible that there's not life out there. But there is no reason why, statistically speaking, any of that other life would have to be intelligent life.
All right, now hear me out on this one.
All right.
Hear me out. I have a semi argument to that. What if we aren't the intelligent life? What if? Hear me out on this, because there's a lot of articles of people being abducted and whatnot and probed and stuff. What if they are coming down, taking us, doing their little research, and determining we are still not smart enough to communicate with them? That is why we do not know of them. What if
Okay.
that's the case?
I see what you're saying. Now, when I say intelligent life, I mean they just have the ability to be not necessarily self-aware, but they can think about their own ability to think. Right. Like what separates us from animals is our ability to realize that we can realize things. And what sets animals apart from like bacteria is their ability to figure things out. Like an animal can figure out, hey, every time I eat this food, I get sick. I shouldn't eat this food anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's intelligent life. So what I'm saying is, even we wouldn't have to be the most intelligent life to make other intelligent life possible. What I'm saying is if you're using statistics to say that as vast as the universe is, there must be some other forms of life out there, you still can't prove that there's enough life out there to make it likely that any of it's intelligent. So I'm going to make up some numbers here just for the sake of examples and state if there were 10 million planets in space,
Mm-hmm.
then statistically, the minimum out there would be that even just one other planet might have life on it. That's not enough forms of life to say that because there's two planets with life on them, both of them must be intelligent life. So instead,
Well,
what
what
you're
if it's an evolutionary state where
it
like
could it
they
could be.
I mean, because there is theories that we all evolved from bacteria into what we are now. That's a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. I do think that evolution would play a factor there because you would evolve to the climate and adapt to certain conditions. So, like you said, our lifestyle is based around oxygen. They could be based around some form of gas, like a gassy planet. They could be
Right.
conditioned to that environment. and evolve over time into a more intelligent life form, or
They,
if
they
not
could
an
they,
actual
they
intelligent
could
life
be, but
form.
what I'm saying is we can't use the probability argument to say that they would already be at that stage. So if you look at it differently, you could say as a percentage, if 10% of all the planets in the universe have life on them, there is no probability argument for how many of them would have intelligent life. That we might be the one with intelligent life, and the others just have things like bacteria or amoebas, right?
Hmm.
So the probability argument might support the likelihood of life on the planets, but doesn't support intelligent life at all.
I still think that there's a possibility that we ain't the top intelligent life form there.
I would argue that if there is intelligent life out there, then there is no telling where they are in comparison to us
Well, that's
until we did
part
make
of my
contact.
a big part of my argument is, what if they are so far advanced and so much smarter than we are at our standard of smarts or intelligence?
There
What?
is there's two good arguments around that, and the first is that they could have just if they are more advanced than us technologically and intelligence, everything, they could be waiting till they feel like, excuse me, that they want to talk to us or communicate with us.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one would be that there is no guarantee that even if they are way more advanced than we are technologically, they could be so far away they're still not capable of communication that could reach us in the same way that we're not capable of communication that could reach them, or even that the way they're trying to communicate is a different
Speaking
form of what we have. Like
Speaking
we
of
may be using.
communication in that sense, I remember reading an article. Do not hold me to this, but I remember it
Okay.
very specifically. There is a sound in space. It is a kind of like a radar blip. Happens every so often, and nobody can explain where it comes from. What if that is a potential way of them attempting communication, kind of like Morse code, and we just
That
don't
could
know.
that could be. I've never heard that. I don't know what to.
I would
I
have to
don't
look
know.
it up again. I didn't think about that until you said communication and it clicked. I remember
Right.
reading an article that specifically said that there's I don't want to say a random blip, but that's the
Are
best
you
way I can
talking
explain it.
about the what was it, the echoes of the Big Bang?
Maybe that might be what
I'm trying to think what I
that might be
was
what it was.
looking at that said something like
But
that.
I do specifically remember reading something that said there is at random occasions, like it hadn't happened often, but there has been noises from space. Not like, it sounds bad saying noises because it's not a noise, but it's not like it's like a bing, like a ping, like something's pinging a location or something. What if it's something that is so vastly far away, so many light years away, that we're just hearing it in a Morse code sense? I say Morse code because that'd be a loose way of explaining it. That is an idea, and that could tie into the fact that maybe they're just not possible of the travel methods to reach us on a physical level. So it's like, hey, we're out here, bing, let you know.
The only references to sound I know of are the references to the buzzing noise that led to the discovery of cosmic microwave background radiation, which was they basically heard this noise coming from every direction in space. And
That
as they
might
tried
be
to figure out what that
that
noise was
might be
coming
it.
from, it was a side effect of the cosmologic background microwaves. And the reason for that was because, again, they believe that that's left over from the Big Bang, and so it would permeate the entire universe.
Mm.
Um, as far as if there was a ping or something, I don't know anything about that. I'd have to look for it.
Like I said, I might be remembering it wrong because I did read it a while back, but I do remember it. You said communication, and it dinged in my head instantly. I was like, I
Right.
remember I read this somewhere.
But I do know that part of the thing with the communication would also be that if they are over a certain distance away, um, whatever form of communication we're both attempting would have to line up in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a bad example, but it's as simplified as I can think of. Would be if you're miles away from somebody and you're sending a transmission to them through FM and they're sending one back through AM, you're not going to connect,
Yeah.
right? Like the communication methods would have to line up. So if they are so advanced that they could reach us, they might be doing it in a way that we don't recognize. Okay, so it is possible they're out there, and it's possible they're trying to communicate. But even understanding that that's the case doesn't make that an evidence for them existing.
See, I don't know. I'm gonna argue this back and forth. I really am because I really think there's too many coincidental stories that line up from around the world of abductions and whatnot. Almost everybody says the exact same thing within. I would say
See,
within a 50 word. If you give them each of them 50 words, I'd say more than half of the words that they put together are going to be the same, even if they've never heard any of the stories before.
see, that's the thing though, is so many people have heard the stories. It's not quite like mass hysteria, where people are learning the behaviors immediately from somebody around them.
Mm-hmm.
There was an episode I don't remember what the show was. I don't want to say the show and get in trouble for naming stuff. But if I remember correctly, what they did was they got over the intercom and started naming symptoms, and everybody thought they had those symptoms because they were being said. And he's like, "I just
Placebo
made that up.
effect.
There's no sickness that has all those symptoms. I made that
Mm-hmm.
up." Right. So he proved mass hysteria was the actual problem there. This isn't like that. But when somebody has any incident where they lose a certain amount of time, they wake up. It's called a fugue state, where you're not aware of what you are, what you're doing, and you can't remember it afterwards. When someone experiences a fugue state in an area where abductions are either common or known, or even just have happened recently enough to be in people's memories, those kind of things are so unusual and uncommon that they stick in your mind somewhere. So then, when you think it's happened to you, you can recall those details that you'd heard before, even
I,
if it
I
wasn't
have
recent, even if you weren't paying that much attention
I
before.
have a slight argument against that
Okay.
because majority of victims, or let's say so-called victims, because we don't have actual evidence, there is a common factor that has been spread about: owl men. I said that they all kind of resemble a tall, lengthy, skinny owl in the face. You not all right. So majority of people could subconsciously think that or see that. They say that right before it happened, the memory blip for when they were being abducted said the last thing that they remember seeing was an owl. I remember reading this. This was a very interesting article. I can't say where I read it because I don't have it pulled up, but I do specifically remember this. They said that they remember seeing an owl, said it looked like an owl was flying towards them, a great white one, and that it would just be a really bright white light. They would see an owl face, and then their memory just kind of lapse. That's a interesting point to look at, in my opinion, because that is something that you can't just make up.
Well, see, the nice thing about what you would get in the dissociative fugue state, where your mind is, I hate to say filling in the gaps, but that's kind of what it's doing. Is you're not remembering things a certain. And I'm not saying this is the case every time. I'm saying this would be the case if I'm right. Is it what happens is, as your mind tries to fill in those gaps, the way it's going to do that is by picking out details, not the big story. So what you'd be more likely to reiterate is small things like that, not things that are bigger, like what were you actually doing when that happens. That's why you'll get stories of them being like, "Yeah, I was abducted. I was walking down the road. Why were you walking down the road? I don't remember, but I do know that I saw a bright light above me and looked up." Like, they remember the small details, but not the big picture. That's why, it's because your mind starts off by trying to fill in the small pieces, and it's going to do that with things
So
that
with you
you've heard.
put
And again, if you notice, a lot of these times where there are stories of abductions, it's in places where it either has happened before, or it happened recently near there. So it would have been a story that they had heard, even if it wasn't a common occurrence.
hmm, again, you threw up some random numbers. Let's just say 100 people. Let's
Right.
say in a hypothetical sense, let's say that this is real. This is real, a real deal thing, and we're surveying them. They said we got 100 people here, and 50 of them have been abducted, and all 50 of them say the same thing about seeing an owl. Is that too much? Is that more of a coincidence? Let's say these people have never met, they never talked, never explained their story to any other person in that room.
Like I said,
Would
that would
that
be
be
that would be the only time we could use it, is if we could prove, hey, this detail. at the least, the vast majority of them never explained this detail to somebody else.
Yeah.
Something
So
like you see in movies where they say, "Hey, we know this guy is an actual," like they're looking for a killer. They say, "Hey, this guy's actually the killer because we never released this detail to the press."
yeah.
Same idea. There has to be something that can provably be something the at least the majority of them kept secret, and that's not usually the case. What happens is they feel like they've been abducted. They're telling the world, and it
Mm-hmm.
could be something as simple as they're interviewed on TV, and I'm sitting in a restaurant, not really paying attention to the TV, but I
Subliminally
hear
hear it.
but I hear it. Yeah, I hear it playing next to me, right? And then I think it happens to me, and my mind starts filling in those gaps.
Mm.
And again, I'm not saying that's definitive proof against. I'm just saying the mind does work that way, so it's not definitive proof for either.
All right. All right. Well, again, that's an argument I can state. Let's see. Where we at? Where we at? I lost my place on my page. I apologize. Also, all right. So let's talk about this. What if what if they are attempting communications and they see what a sorry state our world is in right now? Because I mean,
Which wouldn't take them very long if they're intelligent, right?
exactly. What if that would deter them from wanting to communicate or potentially uh, help our society in some way with either technology or another form of intelligence? In
So if
that
we want,
case,
if we want to assume, and I'm saying that we should, just for the sake of this argument, if we're going to
mm-hmm.
assume that if they are out there and they are advanced enough to be able to at least discover us, and they choose not to communicate, there's only three options if they are intelligent enough to have discovered us. Either they are benevolent, like they're good, they believe in goodness, and they want to help, then they would find some way to communicate, which they haven't. So that leaves two options. Either they just absolutely don't care about us anyways, in which case if they're that apathetic, why would they try to discover other people? Or they're malevolent and they're aggressive, they're against us in some way, whatever the case may be. And even in that case, it's still much more likely that they would actively do something to us or against us. So unless you can think of a fourth option for what they would do, then I mean, what else could there be? Either they're good and want to help us, they don't care, in which case they wouldn't be looking anyways, or they're against us. And if so, then why haven't they done anything against us? Because alien abductions have supposedly been happening for decades.
since the early 1940s, I believe is when I read,
Right.
is the
So
earlier
if they're that
cases.
advanced and they're against us, they wouldn't need that long to figure out something they could do to us.
Well, again, what if they're what is the best way of explaining this? What if they're conditioning us with like, all right, so the media has a big thing with this conditioning folks.
Right.
There's actually a theory. I don't know exactly what it's called, but where they constantly condition you in a thought process, like, hey, this is a thing, this is a thing, this is a thing. So we can use the fact that they released that UFOs are real last year. We've been conditioned since the early 1900s saying that UFOs are a thing for movies purposes or for propaganda, whatever you want to say. We've been conditioned to say, all right, yeah, that's the thing. So last year when they actually released saying, hey, this is a real thing, nobody freaked out. Nobody really batted an eye. Nobody cared. Again, that was in the midst of the pandemic. It was closer to the beginning of it, so everybody was still kind of freaking out a lot. So I mean, that could be to some level, but even with the pandemic kind of calming down, I'm really not sure where we are in this anymore, to be honest with you.
I don't
But
know.
with it calming down more, maybe that would ramp up. But maybe they just conditioned it in the right point and was like, hey, drop this right here. That way everybody forgets and doesn't think about it. What if they're conditioning us in that same sense with extraterrestrials? To the sense where we've been conditioned so much saying that this is a real possibility that when we actually see one or something, we're just like, oh, yeah, we know.
Well, I said there's three options, and without a fourth, we can't really
Well, a fourth could be
try
they're
to
completely
give it.
neutral.
Well, no, that would be the middle option is that they just don't care one way or another. But the fourth option would be that we are some kind of experiment. And again, the problem with that is if they are if they're so advanced that they can not only discover us but be aware of us and interact with us without us being able to prove it, what experiment could they possibly be performing on us? Like what could we what could we possibly help them figure out if they're that advanced? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Somewhat.
Like if they're
Yeah.
so advanced that they can cross space or even be close by in space and hidden from us, then what in the world what experiment could they be performing that they can't just do on their own without us?
Maybe they don't have the sense of emotion.
See,
Emotion is a very complex thing that
that's true, but that's still that's too much of saying, oh, let me fill in a reason why. Like there's not.
what if we're living in a simulation?
Oh my goodness, I no, I'm not ready for that debate.
Now, you
At least not
you
with the time we
said
have left.
you said that we could potentially be a experiment. Brings me to a thought process of a meme I read a while back. What what if we are actually an experiment and we was a science experiment for one of their high school projects, and
Oh my goodness.
we are a C minus sitting on a shelf saying you could have been better, but you wasn't.
Yeah, hey, uh, I'd be surprised by a C minus, honestly. Um, Again, the only thing I can think of, and this sounds dumb, I know it does, but if we were to be some kind of experiment, the only thing that they even could get out of an experiment like that is if it was something long term. And by long term, I mean millennia worth of long term. So I think of the movie. I don't like to say movie titles and stuff when I'm being recorded, but it rhymes with the day the Earth stood Bill. So and the thing with that was that we were an experiment. At the end of the
All right.
experiment,
So,
they took
speaking on that
a,
sense,
a boy and a girl
I have a
and
thought.
started a new Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah,
And again, the only thing with that is that's just
that's a
you're
really
making
far.
up
That's a
something.
stretch.
Yeah, you're making something up to make the theory work, and I don't like to do that.
All right. So, hear me out on this one. Since you
All
bring
right.
up the idea of time, have you've noticed? I'm sure everybody on this entire planet has noticed. Some days feel like they go by like that, and some days feel like they just drag on and on. What if we are an experiment and they have the ability to manipulate our timeline? Not
Oh
our
no.
actual time, but they can actually slow down or speed up to get a certain degree of what they're looking for a little bit faster. In that sense,
The only problem I have with that is I don't think there would be a way to do that that wasn't noticeable
I mean, it's
because we have some different parts of the planet that are not just mathematicians but are constantly watching outward. There would be ways to see that in our observance of the universe that things weren't progressing the way they were supposed to.
all right. Hear me out on that. I got some. I got some for that too.
Okay.
They have the if they have if they're powerful enough to have the ability to manipulate our time, whether it's to speed it up or slow it down. What's to say they don't have the potential possibility of being able to manipulate our memory of it? So, like I said, we remember days. Some days you wake up and then 2 hours later it feels like your entire day's gone.
I
You're
guess
ready
I
for
should
bed.
explain it better this way and say that the only
Because to
the
this
way that we
day,
view time, the only way time could be manipulated, as in the way it's actually operating changed, would be by a supernatural being, not just intelligent life. The only way they could affect our time is if they, for example, wanted a day to last longer, they could do that by slowing down the rotation of the Earth, and a certain part of the Earth just has sunlight longer. But then they'd have to find some way to also make sure that everyone on Earth, all the clocks were moving slower, all the
well, if we're an
everybody who was
experiment, they got full control over it.
observing outward into the universe was everything looked like it was moving at the right pace, even though it wasn't. Like there's so many variables to that
Again, if we're an
that that's
experiment,
even
they
less likely than intelligent life being out there.
I don't know. I have arguments and a lot of thought processes because there's a lot of unexplainable things that happened. And there's one thing that we haven't even touched on yet, and that's pyramids in Egypt. To this day, that they really can't fully explain how the heck they were able to make those. I mean, they were able to explain how, but the precision of the cuts, the way they were able to pick up all the boulders. I understand there were millions and millions of slaves back then, and I don't care how many people you got. If you have a 20-ton boulder or a 20-ton brick, I don't care how many slaves and strong people you have. They're not picking that up. They're not.
Without scientific help.
Scientific help could prove some of it, but you're going to
And
tell
here,
me
the
that
problem with that is as interesting it is to look at things like the construction of pyramids. There's nothing there that is actual evidence of anything outside of Earth. Because what's
I
interesting about
agree with
those
that.
is that there are several theories that work on how they did. We just can't prove which one fit because we don't have any record of it.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
not that there's not it's not that there's we have no idea how it could have happened. It's just that we have ways it could have, but we don't know for sure
can't
which way
explain
it
it.
did happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm not using the pyramids as a full on argument for aliens because there's a lot of people that do that.
Right. But I would say that applies
My
to a lot of the construction theories of how there might have been
yeah,
extraterrestrial influence.
my biggest point of that is the precision of all the cuts. Now, if I remember correctly, of some of the reading I did, you can't even fit a piece of paper in between some of those bricks. That level of precision we almost barely have now.
I don't know. See, like, I mean, if you, this is gonna, I feel like I'm dumbing this down, and I don't mean to, but if you've got two bricks that are 5 tons each,
Mm-hmm.
you set them on top of each other, even though they look like they're not moving, gravity is slowly crushing them together.
All right. Well,
So
yeah, I didn't think
they're
about
going
that.
to be more precise now than they were then. Like the fit is going to be more precise now than it was then because there is an external force, but that external force doesn't have to be extraterrestrial.
Mm.
For example, one of the ways that you could build something like the tiered bricks of pyramids, where they're evenly broken into pieces, is if you set each one up with a support under it, and then put the next one above it with a support under it. You remove the first set of supports, and the inside higher up bricks will actually still hold them in place if you've got your math right. And their math wasn't, it was good, but it wasn't so advanced that it's questionable as far as being from Earth. So they could have done that. And if they did that, that would still mean that also as they were supporting each other before all of them were removed, they're they're pushing on each other the whole time. Like they're built to push on each other, and it would make that happen.
Mm.
So I don't know.
These are the
I guess
questions that keep me up at night.
I mean, hey, they're good ones. I just I don't know. Like I said, I'm a debunker. So
Oh no, I'm a skeptic. I believe a lot of things because there's not evidence against it as well.
and
There's
I'm the opposite. I'm one evidence, like the aliens. I mean, I'll believe it when I see one. That's basically
well,
what I'm
see,
saying.
I don't want to say I give the benefit of the doubt because that's an oversimplified way of looking at it. But the fact of the matter is, if you're looking at it like I said in the beginning, it's a it's a numbers game. If you look at the numbers, there's no way you can look at those and honestly be like, hey, there's no way. And
Here,
that's just a personal opinion of mine. I'm not an expert on
no, no.
this category in
Hey,
any means.
here's what I'll say on that. If it came down to a question of statistically, do you think there is or isn't life on other planets? I would say statistically, it's far more likely there is.
Mm-hmm.
I would also, though, still say that it's very unlikely that it's intelligent life, just because probability wouldn't decide whether that life was intelligent or not.
Hmm.
As few planets as there have to be for the statistics to work out, then there's no probability to push it to be intelligent life. It might just be bacteria in the water on Mars or something,
Yeah.
as
All right.
opposed to,
Well,
there's a planet 6,000 light years away that has monkeys beating each other with sticks. It's just not. You
all
can't
right.
push that
Well,
one with probability.
that is. We've made a lot of very good, solid points. I'm not gonna say who won and who lost, but I'm just gonna call it a draw. So,
Okay.
so you've been here before. You know how I like to end the show. You know I like to do a full disclosure agreement or agreement discussion. If the government was to come out tomorrow and 100% confirm and say these are real, this has been a thing for a long time. We've known about them. Uh, they've actually helped us with our technological advances. Blah blah blah. Whatever. What kind of effect do you think that would have on the world? Also, I'll throw a side thing in there. You can pick whether they are evil or good. If they're here to help us in a good way, or if they're here to help us in a bad way. Whichever route you
Okay.
want to take. Boom.
I will have to take this in three parts and
Three
say
parts. Cool.
that I still think we come down to the three options of they're either good, they don't care, or they're bad. And obviously, I think if they're good, it wouldn't be hard to figure that out. I think some people would, regardless of what three it is, there'd be some people that are just like, I knew it. And then they just go on about their lives.
That would be me.
And then if they're good, there's going to be those who are just going to be fighting to try to connect them, take whatever benefits we can get from them. And it won't be too long before life goes back to whatever the new normal is.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't care, I honestly don't think much is going to change because I think that's something else we'll figure out pretty quickly. Is hey, they're there, but they could care less if we're involved with them. They're not going to help us. They're not going to hurt us. They're like koalas, like they're just there.
Have
So
you
whatever.
seen how evil a koala can get?
No, I haven't. I
Look
just
it
know
up.
that.
Look it up. Look
I know they
look
eat
up a
eucalyptus and
wet
they don't care about
koala.
us.
No, I'm when we're done with this, I want you to look up a wet koala and
Okay,
tell me
I'll do
that thing
that.
is not devil sent.
Okay. All right. I'll compare them to lizards. Like they're there, they know you exist, but they just want to be left alone, right?
Okay.
And so most people leave them alone. Uh, I think the only thing that would affect would be we would quickly get to a point where we tried to kind of compete against them, and I don't know how that would turn out or not. And of course, the third option is we find out that they're out there and they are against us in some way, and either that goes bad fast and we just get wiped out, or hopefully it ends up with a common enemy scenario where everybody on Earth is against the people that or the beings that aren't from Earth, and we would advance quickly enough to try to be able to defend ourselves against them. And who knows how that turns out either. But
Uh,
I think that would be. I think we're too uh,
Selfish.
contentious. I'd say contentious. I think people as a whole. I think we like to fight. We like to war. We like to battle. We like to have something to go against, and that would end up being, hey, let's go against them, and we'd probably do it even if it was a stupid thing to do.
More than likely. So, see, my opinion on it would be I think if they were to come out tomorrow and say, boom, aliens are real, I whether they're good, evil, or neutral, I think there's going to be some level of distrust from the entire world. I think no matter what they're here to do, whether they're here to help our civilization become a better society with either better technology or better anything in general, I think there's going to be a strong level of distrust toward them for a very long time. And by a very long time, I think a few hundred, at minimum, a few hundred years, if not longer. Because if they just show up and, well, not only distrust toward them, distrust toward all governments. If they all knew about them and they didn't tell us,
Yeah.
that is going to, I would say it'd probably send us all into anarchy for a while. I do think it would calm down in the sense of chaos, but I do
I'll give
think
I'll give you
towards,
that one if it turns out, hey, people in authority knew for a while before they told us.
mm-hmm.
I'll give you that one. Yeah.
But I do think towards the alien in general, whether no matter what, if they're here to help, whether they're neutral or whether they are evil, I think there is going to be a strong level of distrust towards them. I do think there's going to be people that are like, oh, cool, you're here. because I'd be one of those. I'd be like, cool, you do whatever you do. I don't care. But personally, I think the way the world is set up now, with how people are and how people react to things, I really do think that they're not going to trust them no matter what. And I think that's going to be a large portion of the world, in my opinion. Again, this is my personal opinion. It's not an actual factual thing. It's just how I see it. I see the world differently than most people do, in my opinion, and I just don't think it'll be peace. I don't think it'll be peaceful at all. I think you would have your certain groups and villages of people that'll be like, hey, we're here to support you and learn from you, but a majority of people would just use it to cause violence. And depending on whether they're good, bad, or evil, or good, neutral, or evil, would determine how they react towards us. Because they could be a good, friendly people, and then they see that we react to them negatively, and they could turn evil really quick. Because they could have the technological advances or whatever we're looking to get out of them, and they could use that against us. I don't know. It's a very interesting topic to think about. I do think that we have just barely scratched the surface of this topic, and we will probably revisit this again in the future with some more specific items or stories of articles of other people and stuff.
Probably soon.
Yeah, probably soon, maybe not. We will see how things work out. I, we do have a plan for another episode. Just have to have all the pieces of the puzzle aligned.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my opinion on it. And yeah, I think that's what we're gonna call it today.
All right.
You got anything else you want to say? I know you ain't got nothing to plug because you would have told me by
No,
now.
just that I always enjoy beating you in a debate.
Hey, it was the stalemate. I don't care what you say. But the way I'm gonna end it, I'm the Riddler 1370 on Twitch. If you ever want to check out my less serious, more funny and goofy side, you can check that out. The link will be in the description below. Also, something I meant to mention at the beginning of this episode, we are going to be adding an email to the description of the videos. I know you forgot about this as well. If you want any specific thing to talk about, or want to hear us talk about, or potentially be on the show with us, you can email it, send it to us. If you want to be on there, let us know and send a very detailed description so we can tell that you know what you're talking about, and
Right.
we'll discuss it from there. Whether it be kind of like a Zoom interview so we can get to know you a little bit better and put you on or whatnot. But that will be in the description as well, along with all of my socials. If you want to follow me, uh, I do a whole bunch of different kind of content. This is probably one of my favorite things I do right now. So yeah, all the links will be in the description below. Y'all like, share, follow, do all that good stuff. But until next time, we out. Have a good night.